Namaskar, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Tina Jha. You're watching Perspective. The Assembly elections in 5 states ended today after the 7th and final phase of polling in Uttar Pradesh. Elections to the 403-member Uttar Pradesh Legislative Assembly were held in 7 phases, which began on the 10th of February and ended on the 7th of March. For Uttarakhand, 70 seats and Goa's 40 seats, voting was held in a single phase on 14th February, while the 117-member Punjab Assembly went to polls on the 20th of February. For the elections for the 60-member Manipur Assembly, polling was held in 2 phases on 28th February and then the 15th of March. So with the marathon polling process now complete, counting of votes in for all 5 states will be held on the 10th of March. In Perspective today, we will try and get a sense from experts on which parties they think seem to be moving towards assuming power in the states that witnessed polls. So without any delay, let me welcome on the show today 3 senior journalists who are joining me on the program virtually. I'm pleased to welcome on the show once again Mr. Ashok Tandon. Good evening, sir, and thank you for joining me on the program today. Mr. K.V. Prasad, senior journalist. Thank you, sir, and welcome to Sansad TV. And Aditi Fadnis, political editor, The Business Standard. Glad to have you back on the program, Aditi Fadnis. Mr. Tandon, so as the senior most member on the panel today, allow me to begin the program with you today. The elections to all 5 states ended today. What's your sense? Because a lot is at stake, especially for the BJP, and the elections are being described as a lot of analysts as a semi-final before the 2024 general elections. So what is your sense? Will the BJP be able to tide over anti-incumbency and retain power in the 4 states that it is currently ruling?
See, whosoever wins on the 10th of March, when the counting takes place, the people of India would certainly win. Also, the victory of Indian democracy. India is a vibrant democracy, and India can hold elections even in the midst of pandemic. This is exactly what we have shown. The Election Commission also has conducted the election in a very fair and free manner, and the law enforcing agencies have also done a wonderful job. It's beyond imagination to see that this election, by and large, has been peaceful. I think that also needs to be highlighted, because we know what used to happen earlier when there was used to be booth capturing and all that. So having said that, I think India has once again proved to the world that we are a functional democracy, a vibrant democracy, and we can hold elections, free and fair elections, in any circumstances. That is what we have demonstrated not only in this election, but in the earlier previous elections also. Now, coming to your point, see, the thing is, it has been a very, very, if I may say, the campaigning has been very high voltage campaign. And because particularly in UP, because there are a 4-corner contest, obviously all the top guns were blazing, and we could see till the last moment when the election was taking place in eastern UP, particularly in Varanasi and other places, and the kind of enthusiasm among the people, and also the kind of energy which the leaders were putting in, including in their road shows. I think if we talk precisely about Uttar Pradesh, see, Uttar Pradesh has seen a lot of alliances. And in this particular election, we have seen there is only one alliance between RJD and Samajwadi Party. Of course, there are smaller parties also, but BSP has been fighting literally alone. Congress has been fighting alone. And then there is BJP plus some smaller parties. So when an election of 403 constituency state takes place, and there are 4 players, all of them may not be key players, but never forget that Congress has been, BSP has been key players in the past. And this time round may not be being counted seriously, but I personally feel, even if the 2017 poll percentage is repeated, I don't think Congress will not be getting the percentage of votes which they got earlier, maybe a couple of percentage more. So therefore, in all sense, it continues to be a 4-corner contest. And in a 4-corner contest, even if in the last election, Samajwadi Party and the Congress were in alliance, but all these multi-corner contests benefited the BJP in the last election. And this election, again, there are 4 forces. Plus, then this election has been fought primarily on the performance of Yogi government in the past 5 years, plus, as they call it, double engine, also the performance and the image and the persona of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, put together, they, of course, are a formidable force. They have proved to be a formidable force. Even in the campaign, they had head start, and their campaign was much better than the other parties. The only party which could organize, I think, a great show of strength and campaigning, of course, was Akhilesh, but he was alone. But still, I think he has tried to match the high voltage campaign of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Now, the results will show whether Samajwadi Party can improve its tally of 77, which they got in the last election, and at whose expense will that be? Absolutely. Because we know the Congress performance in 2017 was really not up to the mark. Also, the BSP. So now, whatever the gain of the Samajwadi Party-led alliance could be at the cost of BJP, because BJP won so many seats, 325 seats they won in the last election. So even if they could cut some ice into their vote bank, and they can at the most reduce the BJP's victory margin by some seats, and even if the BJP crosses the magic mark of absolute majority, whether they can repeat 300 is up to the party to claim. But even if their seats are reduced to some extent and they continue to hold absolute majority, I think the result would be still considered as victory of the double engine government of Narendra Modi at the center.
Okay. And, so whether the other analysts believe or agree to what you are saying, let me go across to Aditi Fadnes. The larger sense is that, even if the BJP loses some of the seats, because the last time around it won an absolute majority, overwhelming 300 plus seats. But this time, even if they lose, say, a couple of seats, it wouldn't be a massive loss for the party, and that the party will be able to form the government. But do you agree with the key takeaway that, Mr. Tandon pointed out, is that whenever there is a multi-party contest, it benefits the BJP. But after 2 years of pandemic, we saw on the ground there were a couple of new issues which, Akhilesh Yadav did talk about, which were also raised by after the farmers' agitation. How much of an impact do you see that happening? And do you think that this time around as well, because of a multi-party contest, the BJP might be able to be in a position of advantage?
I think the BJP is overall in a position of advantage. There's no doubt about that. Although I have to say that the last round of by-elections in which the Kairana election was lost by the BJP, the election in Gorakhpur was lost by the BJP, although that was the Chief Minister's constituency. Also, the Panchayat elections and the local body elections, which were also lost by the BJP, did not portend a degree of confidence of the people in that party. When the opposition unites, the BJP gets a tougher challenge. When the opposition is divided, naturally the BJP benefits from it. But that said, I would still say that the story of this election will not be the election itself, but what will happen after the election, assuming that the BJP is able to form a government, install a chief minister, but people will begin asking why we are getting a chief minister who actually brought down our seat tally from 315 or whatever it was, around that much, brought it down to, I'm assuming it will be much less.
Okay, Mr. Prasad, what is your sense coming from Uttar Pradesh? We'll talk about the other states, but because obviously Uttar Pradesh Assembly with 400 plus seats automatically, tends to get a lot of importance. So, quick sense on what you think about Uttar Pradesh, and then we will cover the other states.
Calculation is more or less in the same spirit, except that I have a different way in which I looked at it. 315 seats, let us reduce 30%, they'll still be 200. Let us reduce 50%, they'll still be at 150, 160. So that means the BJP has a very, very realistic chance of crossing or reaching the halfway mark required, or if they're all as a single largest party, which actually puts them in a position of advantage. So that is a large, because there have been varied reports coming from the ground if there is a wave. I don't know. Many reports did not suggest any wave instead, a wave for who, wave against whom, we don't know. So I would leave at that.
And what is the sense coming in from the ground, Mr. Prasad, from Uttarakhand? Because that is one place where a lot of analysts are talking about a neck-and-neck contest between the Congress and the incumbent BJP. And the fact that the BJP had to, in quick succession, replace their chief ministers, a very, very significant point that could go against the ruling party.
Well, the Congress camp was very, very upbeat about the fact that they would be coming, they'll be wresting power from the BJP. And of course, BJP had to change its chief minister very close to the elections. I think the second chief minister change was more of a technical issue because of the inability to get the elections conducted for having so they had to bring Mr. Dhami as a last minute replacement. So that, of course, but yes, the fight is tough. And remember, the seats are much less compared to what we're looking at UP. But the dynamics of Uttar Pradesh and dynamics of Uttarakhand politics are totally different, because there it is essentially a contest between the two regions of Kumaon and Garhwal. So that has been dominant politics of that state. I still think, of course, BJP is confident of they'll be hoping to retain power, and that's fair enough to expect that they retain power. But this Kante Tucker that you talked about, Uttarakhand, we will also talk about in UP. So we'll have to see what the results actually come out.
Absolutely. So that looks like a tough one for the BJP this time around. But what is the sense, Aditi Fadnis, you're getting from Punjab? That state has been particularly very, very interesting with another multi-party contest. The Aam Aadmi Party looks very upbeat. What we saw, a high decibel campaign from all contenders, a lot of energy put in from all the top guns of the party. But now, who do you think would emerge as the party closest to coming to power?
Very hard to say, and you've put your finger on it. Certainly the most important election, conventionally speaking, is UP, but the most interesting election is definitely Punjab. It's very hard to say, because Punjab has actually never seen, in my recollection, a five-cornered contest in almost every seat. So you have not only a five-cornered contest, you have a chief minister walking out or being thrown out of the Congress and joining the BJP in leading the campaign. You also have the Akali Dal and the Bahujan Samaj Party joining hands. So it's a very difficult situation, very hard to tell, very close to call.
Mr. Tandon, what do you think about Punjab? Could the state be staring at a hung assembly?
I think the only question about the Punjab election results is who emerges as the single largest party. Will it be the Congress or the Aam Aadmi Party? That is the only academic question, but hung assembly is most likely, and that will throw up so many options. And as we understand from political circles, backroom parleys have already begun. Who can get support from which faction or which group, that will depend. But by and large, one can easily say that there is hardly any chance of any political party getting an absolute majority in Punjab. Though, after Mr. Channi was appointed as the chief minister, and in his, against him happens to be Bhagwant Mann, so that apparently has given a slight edge to the Congress. So I will not be surprised if Congress emerges as the single largest party, but may be short of majority. And the Aam Aadmi Party may, of course, will improve its tally of 15 from the last election. But Akali and the BSP, well, they may also try, but I don't think any party can think of getting an absolute majority.
Mr. Prasad, Punjab is very, very interesting because, of course, we've been talking about the multi-party contest. And as Aditi rightly pointed out, that, the state has not witnessed such a kind of contest in the last couple of decades. In the case of a hung assembly, do you see the Aam Aadmi Party, if it emerges as the single largest party but without an absolute majority, do you see this party joining hands with the Congress, going the Delhi way that the first time it contested elections, it joined hands with the Congress but had a bitter fallout within a few weeks? So do you think that could be one option which these two parties could look at?
Well, as the saying goes, politics is the art of possible. And let me put it this way, that there have already been voices coming out from the Congress camp, though not very strong, that in case of such a requirement, a suggestion like that the Congress could support the Aam Aadmi Party. Now, that's a very, very open as of now, because nobody would like to speculate, but all reports that came on the day of polling, and after that, I spoke to people who are political parties and others in Punjab. Their sense was there was among a large section of the youth, a large section of the urban, and remember Punjab is a 60% urban population. A large section had this feeling of badlav. They wanted, because having reported political developments in Punjab for a pretty long time, as Aditi ji was saying, the fight was bipolar between the Congress on one side and the Akali Dal on the other side. For the first time after 2017, when AAP came in, for the first time it became a pentagonal contest. But AAP was this time seen as a serious contender, because last time around, AAP was a serious contender, but the other big forces joined hands and closed the ranks so that there was no division of votes. Unlike that, this time there is a clear division of votes, so one has to wait and see. But hung assembly is what everybody is predicting, and something as you suggested, or as I read in a couple of places, the Congress would not mind extending support if push comes to shove.
Okay, we've spoken about the three big states, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Punjab. But Goa is another state, Aditi Fadnis, very interesting, because here the single largest party does not get to call the shots. It's about who moves first. The last time around, we saw the Congress emerge as the single largest party. But because the BJP acted so swiftly, the Congress was left behind. What is your assessment from this coastal state?
So anyway, the latest is that all the top guns of the Congress have been stationed in Goa to make sure that what happened last time doesn't happen this time. So that is that just shows that the Congress is extremely confident and very positive about about being returned. There are a lot of problems in Goa in this election. One, of course, is that Manohar Parrikar's son Utpal has not been given a seat by the BJP, which has preferred to field to support a very senior and very wealthy Christian candidate for that seat. So the gentleman who was disgruntled from the Sangh in Goa has actually offered his support. His name is Subhash Velinkar, and he was an inseparable part of the Sangh till a couple of years ago when he rebelled and left it. He formed his own party, and he is a reasonably important factor in Goa politics. Now, I don't know how much of an effect this is going to have in this election. It definitely had an effect in the last election, which is why the BJP was not able to initially get the numbers to form the government. But in Goa, the faces will be the same. Their parties will be completely different. Certainly. So that is a very fact of life in Goa politics. And so we have to see which party and which people we see in government.
Absolutely. Mr. Tandon, very quickly, let's also touch upon the northeastern state. Since 2014, the BJP has put in a lot of effort. A lot of thrust has been on forging alliances with regional parties here, also forming governments in a couple of northeastern states. But what is the sense that you're getting from Manipur? Will the party be able to comfortably retain the state, or do things look different?
Like Goa, Manipur also is a small state. And therefore, the political uncertainty has been the hallmark of most northeastern states. But over the years, the BJP has somehow consolidated its base with the help of the smaller parties and factions and all that. Now, while going to the poll, how much that kind of alliance will remain intact? Because it has always been a very tricky state. So therefore, it's very difficult to say whether because the other parties and the other smaller regional parties are also, trying their best to forge some kind of an understanding. So I am not very sure about the opposition's performance in Manipur, whether it will be really very effective. And the way BJP has captured the northeastern states mostly from the Congress ranks. And we should not forget that Hemanta Biswas, Hemanta Sharma, he is a key player in the entire Northeast, and he was in charge of Manipur this time. And I think he has been a very key player in consolidating BJP in all the northeastern
and
states.
also for
And this
now, I
time
think
round
the
again-
BJP leadership is quite upbeat that it is going to retain the 4 states that it is currently ruling. But it's been a very interesting election, as all three of you pointed out. High-octane campaigning, a lot of energy from the top leaders. A lot is at stake, especially for the ruling BJP, because it is an anti-incumbent party in at least 4 of the 5 states. The party knows it is not going to win in Punjab, but the 4 states it is very confident of winning. So let's see, and let's all wait for what happens on the 10th of March. For now, I'll have to wind up the program. Thank you to all 3 of you for joining me on the program today, sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. It's always a pleasure to have you on Sansad TV. So that's it from us on this edition of Perspective Today. Thanks very much for your time.